Has there been a bigger surprise in Major League Soccer than the 2025 Vancouver Whitecaps? Earlier in the offseason, the ownership group announced that they would be listing the team for sale, a move that left many fans skeptical about how the club would perform this season. They also parted ways with Vanni Sartini and brought in Jesper Sorensen, an unknown Danish manager at the time. Yet, despite all the uncertainty, here they are, first place in the Western Conference, semifinalists in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and looking better than they ever have. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to MLS Moves. Please make sure you like this video down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Our goal is to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And with your help and support, I know that we will do it. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. We're only 3,500 away. Also, make sure you hit the little bell notification so you never miss any of my new videos. I brought on Michael from Away from the Numbers to share his thoughts on their remarkable 2025 start to their season, whether he's shocked by their performance, and to discuss the potential sell of the club. Now, on to the video. Michael, welcome to the show, my friend. Today, we're going to be talking about a team that, honestly, a lot of people are a little shocked about how good they played this year, the Vancouver Whitecaps. Before we get into that, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing very good. Thanks for having me on the show. Always happy to talk Whitecaps.
So, at the beginning of the season, they put out a statement, the Vancouver Whitecaps. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing, they said that they were going to list the team for sale. They didn't think they had the necessary resources or time or just, anything. They didn't have what it took to put into this team to make it successful going forward, and that they were going to start the process of selling the team. Were you surprised that they were going to list the team after so many years? Like, what was your initial thoughts when that was announced?
I mean, it was a huge shock. I think a few people thought that the majority owner, Greg Kerfoot, might put the team up for sale after the World Cup because he's getting to retiral age. He's now looking at retirement planning. But one of the other majority owners, Jeff Mallett, has always spoken about he's in this for the long term. He wants to hand it down to his children. He wants to give them a legacy. So for the whole club to suddenly go up for sale the year before the World Cup is coming to Vancouver, I mean, it stunned everybody. And the immediate thought was, well, nobody's going to want to buy this team and keep it in Vancouver. We're going to lose the team. It's going to get moved.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about that in a second because I personally don't want that to happen. I don't like moving clubs. I like to keep them where they are, especially because even if a team has a bad run of luck or they're just not playing well, there's always going to be loyal supporters of every team, and it's just a terrible thing to take their club away from them and rebrand it in another city. That's just that I couldn't imagine that them doing that to any other team. They certainly don't do it over in Europe. That would be, I mean, could you imagine Manchester United or Manchester City leaving their cities and going to London or wherever? That just wouldn't happen. What do you think what do you think this means for the club? Obviously, we're going to get into their incredible start to the season. But what do you think? Do you think that this is going, with the success they've had, that this is going to get a local buyer? Like, I've always thought maybe like Ryan Reynolds in the ownership group, because he's from Vancouver. We obviously have seen what he's done with Wrexham and helping build that brand. And it's crazy, Michael. I think Wrexham might be more popular in America than any MLS team, just because of the storytelling they've done with the team, which is kind of crazy. But do you think maybe like an ownership group, maybe led by a person like Ryan Reynolds, could happen?
I don't know that he would lead it. He could still be involved. He just doesn't have that kind of money, really. That's the problem. Like, the Whitecaps are valued American dollar wise about 500 million. So when you're putting that into Canadian dollar wise, because the Canadian dollar is quite weak at the moment, it's a lot more money for Canadian buyers. And you look around the city and you can't really think who in the city has that money. So our main hope would be that Jeff Mallett still wants to be involved and that he kind of puts together a consortium of American investors, Canadian investors, maybe somebody like Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds is bound to have contacts as well. The Whitecaps played Wrexham last year in a friendly. They had an event before it, which I went along to, and it was interesting because the people that went to that never seen them at games. And I cover local soccer here at all levels, and this was a whole different crowd. So he has brought something, as you say, to Wrexham that I think clubs around the world would love. I don't know that I see him involved here. I also don't really know who locally. There's a couple of names that kind of came to mind. They've kind of ruled themselves out now. There is a rumor that just will not go away, no matter how many times the club are saying our prime goal is not to move them from Vancouver. But this Indianapolis group is always rumored that that's the only interested party right now. They want to buy the team, they want to move it to Indianapolis. And as you talked about, no one wants to see that happen. I remember back Austin Aztecs way back in the day when Austin lost at their club, and then the whole Columbus situation. I'm actually an AFC Wimbledon fan, so I've been through that with my team over in the UK, and it's not anything that you'd wish on anybody. I mean, the Whitecaps would probably get resurrected in the Canadian Premier League, but that's a whole different level. Nobody even wants to contemplate that. The best thing we've always said to do is to show people that the club deserves to be in Vancouver. And the way to do that is to have a winning team on the pitch, to sell tickets, to get good crowds, to have an excitement, to have a buzz, to have the media talking about the team in a city where probably 95% of the media coverage is on Vancouver Canucks and the hockey. So it's a hard sell, but everything is trending in the right direction. And one of the good things that this has actually done, and people are kind of wondering, was this the plan all along? Was this the leverage? The city here has now come out and said, yeah, we will work with the Whitecaps to build a soccer-specific stadium. Now, the owner here, Greg Kerfoot, tried to do that 2007, 2008. He had the land, he owned the land, it was all his money, nothing was coming from public coffers, but it still got rejected because the local people that lived there didn't want the disruption in the neighborhood. And when you think you've got an owner that wanted to build a stadium with his own money and it's not approved, that's like mind-blowing when you see what happens elsewhere in North America. But now there's a kind of exhibition ground up here that has a racetrack, and horse racing is a dying sport, really. You can get into the animal welfare side of it or whatever, but it's a bit of a white elephant. It's not used that often. It is the perfect place to build a soccer stadium. 25, 30,000 capacity, views of the mountain. The only thing that lets it down is that there's not great transit, but the plan is to have transit linked into it as well. So that's kind of forced the hand here. And now that's made people think, oh, well, now it's a lot more attractive to keep the city in Vancouver, but you still have to find that buyer or buyers that want to do that and want to cough up an awful lot of money. And you see what RSL just sold for as well. What was it? The rumors are like 500 million, and that included 3 teams and 3 stadiums. And you're like, wow, the Whitecaps don't have anything like that right now.
No, exactly. And I was going to ask you, I didn't think that the Whitecaps owned BC Place. I think it's city owned, right? So
Yeah, it's
that
provincial government. They own it. It hosts the BC Lions. It hosts trade shows. The Whitecaps Miami game that we'll come to in a bit is having to get played on Thursday because ACDC are playing on the Tuesday, and they need a 48-hour teardown, but they've somehow come up with a plan that they can actually get it torn down beforehand, but it means Miami can't train on the BC Place pitch. And they're not overly happy with that.
No,
So,
because it's definitely an adjustment because they have turf, right? In BC
yeah,
Place. Yeah, they play on turf.
and it's horrible
Um,
turf.
I've heard it's very, very hit or miss how players feel about it, but normally more miss. People don't generally like playing at BC Place.
Yeah.
But as far as like the valuation, which you just mentioned, you said RSL rumored $500 million, acquiring 3 teams, all the stadiums. The fact that Vancouver doesn't own a soccer specific stadium, they are playing pretty well. It does kind of make me wonder with the World Cup hype, what this team could be sold for. And honestly, Michael, I think a lot of teams are going to probably cash out on selling their team during the hype. Like I
Mhm.
expect you don't want to list all your teams at one time because then you're kind of competing and maybe even devaluing. Like, well, Vancouver's 500 million. Well, I can buy DC United for 450. Just use an example. Like you don't want to compete against your other teams. But I do think there will be other teams listed for sale. And I mentioned DC United because I think that's a team that likely will be listed for sale in the near future as well. Now, as far as ownership groups, right? Who owns the Canucks? Is that a local person who would maybe be interested in buying the Whitecaps?
It's quite funny. The guy that owns it, it's the Aquilini Group. They're kind of property developers in the city. Now, way back in 2010, 2009, they were also interested in getting an MLS team here, but it went to the Whitecaps and their group, which is still the group today. There was a lot of bad blood between the two groups at that time. And my understanding is, like, he's come out and said, "Not interested now." It's too much money, I think, for them as well. There's also, like, this coming week, they're about to launch a new women's professional hockey team here, and folk are wondering, are the Canucks involved with that as well? Because it's the same marketing group that's marketing that event that the Canucks use. So that might be where their money's going. But they're out. The BC Lions owners, which is our CFL team, which is like Canadian football, NFL equivalent, they don't have that kind of money. And I forget the guy, I think his name's Tom Gagliardi. He owns Dallas hockey side, which hockey's not my team or my sport, despite living in Canada. So I can't remember. It's at Dallas Kings. I think that's
The
Dallas
Dallas
hockey.
Stars, I think.
Dallas Stars, right? So he
Yeah.
owns them. So, oh yeah, it's LA Kings. So Dallas Stars, he owns them, and he's local, and he's kind of come out and said he's not interested in buying it, but he feels the team needs to stay here, so he's open to helping facilitate interested parties.
Yeah, and I think because we're going to talk about the magical season they're happening in a little bit, but it could not have came at a better time because I think this really does put the pressure to keep the team in Vancouver because the fans are excited. They're proving they can win. And I don't think there's going to be a change of heart by the ownership group saying, actually, I think maybe we do have the resources to win because we're doing it this year. But I do think this does help because if it was a bad season, it really kills the momentum of like
Yeah.
saying we need to keep the team because you hear they're for sale, you hear rumors they're going to move. Fans probably stop showing up because they're really disheartened and they're just like, it kills all the joy of watching the games because their team's going to be ripped away from them. But that has not happened. And I would, like I said earlier, I don't want to see him in Indianapolis. There was rumors about Las Vegas. Now,
Mhm.
the Las Vegas, moving them to Las Vegas, I don't think that would happen because MLS really loves their expansion fees and they
Yeah.
probably could get $500 million for that. And they don't want to lose out on that type of money. But like you said, Indianapolis, that is a team that they are a market that they have been really hot and heavy for recently, especially because the Indy 11, the USL team announced that they were going to build a stadium and there's been some stuff going on there. But I will say, Michael, I think the momentum is in your favor. I don't think this team, if I had a bet right now, I don't think they're going to move. I think they will find the right owner that will keep them in Vancouver. And hopefully, like you said, they can eventually get a soccer specific stadium because, man, I tell you, I'm not totally familiar with the city landscape, but I've seen several pictures and I think Vancouver has one of the most beautiful skylines and just downtown looks I've ever seen. And that's why I think a lot of movies will even do a lot of recording or direct,
Mhm.
they'll shoot a lot of films in Vancouver because of how beautiful it is. So I can only imagine how nice it would be to have a downtown stadium in Vancouver. It'd be beautiful. It'd be electric. And now BC Place, what's the capacity? Is it 50,000 if the whole thing's open?
You can get 58 to 60,000 in. The Miami game on Thursday looks like it's gonna be 54 because they're currently doing some big renovations at the stadium for the World Cup, so there's certain sections that can't get opened. But, I mean, when it's all finished, probably 58.
Yeah, so I think, and I don't know what their average attendance is, but I think they've had some pretty loyal fans. I think it's been really good this year. I mean, you mentioned earlier about 25 to 30,000 seat stadium. I think they would, if they're playing well, I don't think they would have any trouble filling up that stadium, or at least 25,000 fans, every home match. Now, moving on to the season, right? I've mentioned this 100 times, like in all my videos, about how when you hear the team being listed for sale, you just don't know what you're going to get. But they have proven me wrong. This team has. I have to say this correctly because I always get people always get mad when I say beat Liga MX teams. They advanced against two Liga MX teams in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. They're in the semifinals, which we're going to talk about the preview for Miami. But this is part of what they've done this season. I think they're 6-1-1 so far. Maybe it's 6-1. They got 2 draws now. I think
Yeah,
they just
we just drew on Saturday, so it's 6-1-2.
6-1-2, only 1 loss this year. Now, look, I know you're probably a fan of the club, don't want the club to leave. I mean, I see your jersey behind there, but I don't think anybody predicted this kind of start. Even the most optimistic fan, I don't think saw how good of a start they've had this season.
Yeah, I mean, to be totally honest, when we did our preseason predictions, we had the Whitecaps somewhere between 8 and 12. We thought if they could string some results together, if they could add some pieces that felt were missing, maybe squeeze into the wild card game. I genuinely thought the Western Conference would be better than it has been so far. And that does kind of play into it. Like, you look around the West just now, and there really aren't teams that are standing out. And teams like the Galaxy, that I don't think anyone would have expected them to be at the bottom. But even if you look at the top 4, I don't think anyone after 9 games would have those 4 clubs in the top 4 in any order whatsoever. Because you'd be having Seattle in there, you'd be having LAFC in there. So they've definitely surprised everybody. Having a new coach coming in, losing Vanni Sartini, that people around the league loved Vanni Sartini. He was a character. We had a great relationship with him. We had him on our show constantly. Even after he left, we went for coffee with him just to catch up with stuff. But I thought at the time, at the end of the season, I said, and even Vanni said this himself, which is always a worrying when the coach says this, I think it needed a new voice in there. It was a good team. You saw it in the playoffs. You saw them dismantling Portland. You saw them going toe-to-toe with LAFC. But in the run-in, they had a 6-game stretch where they basically threw away a top 4 finish, arguably even a top 2 finish. And you have to wonder why, because the quality was there. Was the coach maybe taking them as far as he could go? I felt he had. And now Jesper Sorensen has just cemented that. He's come in with pretty much the same group. There has been a couple of key additions, but they're not flashy additions. It's guys that when they come in, you're like, oh, well, he might be good. He might have some good flourishes. But every single player that's come in, even our fringe players, Jesper Sorensen has elevated them to a different level. He's taken them all up a notch. And the players that were doing well last year, like Sebastian Berhalter, he has now moved up a different level. Brian White, who had 2 career seasons, 15 goals in MLS in the last 2 regular seasons. Every year we're like, oh, well, he can't keep having career seasons. And then he has a start to the season like he just has, and has now put himself in the US national team mix, which crazy to think, really. But if you look at this team right now, if anyone said to you, 9 games in, coming towards the end of April, you're top of the West, you're top of the Supporters' Shield, you're in the semi-finals of the Champions Cup, you're 2 good results away from being in the Club World Cup in 2029, I think folk would have thought something had absolutely crazy had happened in the off-season and we had brought in tons of star quality. But we're doing this with not a flashy team, and without our best player, Ryan Gold, who's out injured. And we've had other key players out injured as well. So factoring everything in, it's exceeded expectations hugely. And whatever they do now, especially in Champions Cup, they've a lot to be proud of. And they've done themselves proud. And they've got a buzz around the team again.
I was a really big fan of Sartini because, like you said, he was just a quote machine, big character, he was just a good guy. Like, you wanted to hear what he had to say, and he was fun to watch and listen to. And then they obviously parted ways with him at the end of the season. I thought he did a good job, but like you said, maybe he just kind of hit a ceiling. He took the team as far as he could. Then they hired this Danish manager, like you said, Jesper Sorensen, and he has been incredible. Like, he is by far the leader in the house of the coach of the year in Major League Soccer, what he's done. I mean, they're like you said, if the season ended today, they would be the number one team in MLS. They'd be the Supporter Shield winners, like everybody predicted, right? And pretty much with the same team, a team that said they're going to be for sale. They're not buying a bunch of players to bring in here and try to go for it. He's just taking the group they pretty much have already had, and he's getting the most out of it. So I think he deserves so much credit for what he's done. But like when you think about it, Michael, you've watched every game that Sartini coached, and then what Sorensen's coaching his young Vancouver Whitecaps coaching career. And what is the biggest difference between both managers? Like their styles of what are they doing differently?
What Vancouver are now are a team that want the ball. And under Sartini, Mark DeSantis before him, Carol Robinson before that, we were a counter-attacking team. And at home, it didn't go well, especially last year under Sartini. Our home form was terrible. And it's because that counter-attacking style didn't mesh against teams that were also wanting to do that. And the games were horrible and we just couldn't get going. This year, Sorensen has the team wanting the ball. They want possession. They will go on the front foot from the very start. They'll take the game to the opposition. It's a high press. As soon as they lose the ball, they want it back. And they're trying to force turnovers in the final third, and they're getting turnovers in the final third. They're patient. They've been leading the league with most touches in the opposition box, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I would still like them just to shoot as opposed to just knocking it around the box, but it's getting the results. Defensively, they're so solid. The midfield also solid. But the key to it all is no matter who comes in, there's not a drop off in quality. Every player knows their role. Every player is kind of interchangeable. If you have to do too many at once, that's where we have a problem. That's why the game that they lost this year against Chicago is the game at the international break when we had 5 players away, a couple of players injured, and it's like that really hit them hard. So the depth is there for the odd change, like 2 changes a game, 3 changes a game. It doesn't necessarily weaken the team. You've got players that are injured just now that are internationals, like Ryan Gold, Sam Adekugbe. And obviously, Gold, when he's fit, will come straight back into the team. Sam Adekugbe, the guy that's come in to replace him, 19-year-old American rookie, Tate Johnson. And it's really hard to say, oh, well, he deserves to lose his place as soon as Sam's fit. So it's like, how does Sam show that he needs to get his spot back? But there's been so many games and there's been so many injuries that it's also meant that players have got minutes earlier in the season that they maybe would not have got. And because of that, they've thrived on it. We've always talked here that when we've brought players in before, they've never seized their opportunity. This season's different. Every single player, JC and Gando, in the USL last year with Las Vegas, his option initially wasn't picked up. Then they brought him back. Just interviewed him last week for our latest podcast, and he put everything down to Jesper Sorensen. He said he's come in, he's made everybody believe, he's made everybody buy into it. Now, not talking Ted Lasso style, but almost like that. Like he's come in and everyone has bought into what he's done. And another key aspect, I know this is a long-winded answer, our zonal marking defensively, which I hate, has gone out the window. We are now proper marking, a little bit zonal, little bit of man marking, and we've now got the best defensive record in MLS. And that's not a coincidence.
Well, mentioning Ryan Gauld because he's been the most important player the last couple of years. Now, Brian White obviously has been one of the most underrated players in Major League Soccer. Like you said, he's getting his flowers now and USMNT call-ups, and that's good to see. But sometimes, and I've seen this in other sports, and especially in soccer, when a team has such good chemistry and they're playing well, even though a player has quality like Ryan Gauld, sometimes I feel like when he gets reintegrated into the starting 11, it could be a little awkward or maybe not flow as well as it had been. Do you think he will seamlessly just fit right back into the starting 11, or could we see him struggle when he gets reintegrated back into the starting lineup?
I think he's got the quality that I mean, maybe 1 or 2 games coming in off the bench, and then he'll just seamlessly slot in. What I'm kind of interested in is how Pedro Viti does once Gold is back in the team, because Pedro Viti is having a career year. He has been outstanding. And I think a lot of that is because Ryan Gold's not there. So Pedro Viti's had to step up and be that playmaker. Because when Pedro Viti was playing beside Gold, it kind of felt that he didn't really know his role. He didn't really know what to do. So whereas I think Gold will come in seamlessly, it's what knock-on effect that has to the rest of the team. The worrying thing about Gold is, like, we've been joking, Jesper Sorensen keeps saying he's a couple of weeks away. And we're joking, that clearly means something different in Denmark because it's 2 months now. But in all seriousness, it's slightly concerning because when he went down in the game, like right away, we were all like, we were watching the replays back in the press box and we're like, oh, that his knee looks gone. That could be a season ending thing. And then you're told the next week, oh, no, it's not as bad as we thought. But he's still feeling pain and the pain's not going away and they won't rush him back until that pain goes away. So at some point, they either have to say, well, we need to bring him back, or does he need surgery? Which hopefully not. I mean, he's been doing light running, he's been doing gym work, but he's not taken part in scrimmages yet. And I think as long as he's feeling pain, you can't risk him. Because, yeah, you could get him back for a couple of games, but then you could lose him for the rest of the year. So it's weighing up what's important. Now, if you said to me, well, you bring Ryan Gold back, he plays against Miami, plays in the final if they get to that, and then something happens and he's out for the rest of the year, would you take that? Maybe. If what he did in those games got them to win the Champions Cup, got them to the Club World Cup, but ultimately you want to win the MLS Cup as well. That's what captures the imagination in the city. Being Champions Cup champions would be fantastic, and the hardcore and myself, everyone like that would love it. But the general public who, aside from this Miami game, because it's messy, haven't maybe fully bought into the competition. I think to them, with the North American sport culture, it's the playoffs, the MLS Cup, that's the important thing.
So let's transition into this matchup. The first leg is Thursday. It's at BC Place, Inter Miami versus Vancouver. This is going to be the toughest match that Inter Miami has had this season. They just recently played the Crew. They beat them. That was the only other undefeated team in Major League Soccer. But I also would say, Michael, that this is probably Vancouver's toughest challenge this year, playing Miami. How are you feeling about this first leg? And do you think that Vancouver is a good matchup for the way Miami plays?
I think this is the perfect opponent for the Whitecaps. And again, a few months ago, if I was sitting here saying I'm confident we can score a couple of goals and take a lead to Miami in the second leg, I would have thought crazy talk. The key is to try and keep Miami off the score sheet. Now, LAFC managed it in the last round, and then wheels came off down there. In our previous two games against the Mexican sides, we gave up an away goal, which made it tricky then down in Mexico, but it didn't phase the guys. So even if we go in on level terms to Miami, we've definitely got a chance. If we can go down to Miami with a clean sheet and a one or multiple goal lead, I think they'll get it done. I watched the Columbus game on Saturday. It was very interesting because, especially in the second half, the way Columbus played is how the Whitecaps play, aggressive, on the front foot, taking the game to Miami. And Miami had no answer for it. Columbus just couldn't finish. And if they had, it would have been 3-4 goals for Columbus. Now, can the Whitecaps finish? That's the thing. They couldn't even create against St. Louis on Saturday. They were starting to look tired, which is understandable. Now, the adrenaline will be pumping through them for this one. If they can conjure up that Austin game, the finishing in that, if Brian White can finish some chances, they've got a great chance in this. I genuinely am confident that they can win it. I'm going down to Miami as well for the second leg, so I'm hoping it's still very much in the balance by that point. Everyone's wondering, will Messi play? I think he'll travel, but I don't think he starts.
Yeah, I don't think he starts because of how he played the full game against the Crew, and he's 37 years old. Obviously, you got to manage his minutes. He just can't play every game 90 minutes in this short turnaround, right? Because this would be his fourth match in like 12 or maybe 14, 14 days or
Yeah.
something like that. So
I mean, he hasn't been doing that.
no, and if he did start, right? If he did start, I would expect him to not play a single minute in Saturday's match. If they, I think Miami plays Saturday. I would not
No,
expect him to
they
play.
got that moved to Sunday because we got ours moved to Sunday, so they then had to follow suit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would expect him to not play in that game if he starts against the Vancouver Whitecaps. And I would. The only reason why I could see him starting is because this is an important game. I mean, this is
Mhm.
on the road. That one goal would help you so much on the aggregate, because if you don't score and then Vancouver goes to Fort Lauderdale and gets a goal, you're chasing the whole game. You're chasing. And you brought up an interesting point about the Crew really turning it on in the second half. I didn't think Miami played very good the whole game. I feel like they got, I don't want to say lucky, but they were fortunate to get the header by Kramaski. But I think that that's kind of why they're such a great team, is because even when they don't play good, they still get results. And I think that that's what makes them a dangerous team, because when they do play well, I mean, all bets are off. I don't know if anybody can really beat Inter Miami, but I will say this: everybody thinks Miami is going to beat Vancouver, or the majority, a lot outside of probably Vancouver. But honestly, I've been watching this tournament for so long, you can't predict. It's just the unexpected happens so much. Like, I could totally see Vancouver beating them, and even badly, like embarrassing Miami. I could see them winning 4-2, 5-2 on aggregate, honestly, and making it to the final. Which, interestingly enough, if they do make it to the final, that would mean that all three Canadian clubs have made it to the CONCACAF Champions Cup
Yeah.
final in the last 10 years, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because there's 30 teams in MLS now. But I don't know. I think anybody. I was not sold on Vancouver after the first 3 weeks. And I was like, I want to see them play a team. And then after like week 5, I was like, well, I mean, there's no more excuses for why they're so good. Like, they're just a good team. And I think that they are going to give Miami a run for their money. I think it's going to be the best series that we've seen in the Champions League so far. I really believe that it's going to be two heavyweights, the two best team. How awesome is that to see the two best teams in MLS get to play in the Champions League to see who goes to the final?
Oh, I mean, it's phenomenal. There's another aspect as well that I don't think has been mentioned in the wider, context by people, but Miami, if they want to host the final, they need to win both legs to have a chance. Whitecaps as well, we need to win both legs and hope for 2 draws in the other game, which seems unlikely, so, even if we get through, I think we know we're going to Mexico. But Miami want to host. They have already said that for the first part of their season, this is their priority. So, yeah, the game against Dallas on Sunday, they will just rest guys. They've also got the disadvantage, and they have to fly twice because they've got to fly here and then fly back, and they've got another game. But they need to get that. If they want to host, they need to get 2 wins. So they kinda have to go for it. I do think, I mean, Taylor Twellman made a big deal at the end of the game on Saturday about Messi was limping as he went off. He wasn't mobile for the last 20 minutes. I mean, I did see him grimace when he made a couple of passes, and immediately I was like, "Oh, is that his groin again?" And it's been played down by Miami. They say he's fine, but I think he'll come this time. He didn't obviously come last year in the league game, which kind of was understandable. Him and Suarez, I would not be surprised if they both start on the bench. And then depending on how the game goes, they may get thrown on if they feel, right, this isn't going well. We have to try and get an away goal here at least.
Yeah, Luis Suarez, I definitely could see, because he hasn't missed any games. He's played almost every single match, and I don't know how many Miami games he watched outside the Crew game, but he really looks different this year compared to last year.
Yeah.
Like, he looks like he might actually be finished. Like, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, because he's one of the best strikers of all time, but I mean, Father Time is undefeated, and he is 38 years old and has some pretty bad knees, and
Yep.
he looks even slower than he did last year, which seemed hard to believe. So I would agree. I think he definitely Messi, I'm 50-50 if he starts. If he does start, he will not have an appearance in the Dallas game. He will not play a single minute in that game. He will be rested the whole entire game. But like you said, the only reason I think that there's a chance he will start, is because you said they have to win both games in order to host, and that is very important. And obviously, if Messi's on the pitch, you have a better chance of doing that than
Yeah.
not. So that will be that will be interesting to see what happens. Do you have any score predictions for the first match?
I think 2-0 Whitecaps. Might be optimistic. 2-1 might be more realistic. I'm hoping it's 2-0. I mean, I'd like it to just be out of sight because I actually have tickets for a concert that night, and the start of the concert is going to clash with the end of the game. So I'm like, "Oh, it'd be nice if it was a couple of goals and I can just miss the end of the game and go to the concert." But no, I think the Whitecaps will get the win. It's then what they can do down in Miami, because if Miami play the way they played against LAFC in that second half, I don't see any team competing with them. So we have to get the advantage, and the clean sheet and a goal or two would give us that hope anyway.
I think that I see the Vancouver Whitecaps either winning like probably 3-2 or it being a draw 2-2. I don't see Miami winning this game. That's too far of a distance from. It's like a 3,000-mile, maybe even over 3,000-mile trip from. It's the furthest clubs from each other in the
Yeah,
United
it's
that there is in the league.
6-hour flight because I know mine's down to Miami is like 6 hours, so it's a long flight. The other thing as well, like the pitch will play into it, and I've spoken about how poor it is. The fact that there is a concert on it with 50,000 people flattening that turf 2 days before, that's not gonna help Miami. Another little fun tidbit as well, because they're doing stadium renovations, Miami have to shower in porta cabins because the showers aren't working. So it's gonna feel like they're going to, like, a non-league English thing in the FA Cup, or
Yeah.
maybe what they had down in Jamaica as well. So
Yeah.
it's not gonna be fun for them, and they're not gonna enjoy this, and they just want to try and get in and get out with as little damage as possible. They'll know if they can score, if they can win this game, the second leg's probably gonna be a formality, so they might go for it. But yeah, it'll be an interesting one.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see what happens. I think it's going to be a very, very high quality match. It's going to be very intense, a lot at stake. Michael, it was a pleasure to have you on. Before I let you go, where can everybody find your podcast at? Anything that you do with your site?
So everything's on aftn.ca, our podcast, our writing. We cover the game here from all levels, international, down to grassroots and amateur, men, women. I do commentary for the third tier here, like the USL2 equivalent and college stuff as well. So you can find everything on that. Just got a new podcast out on Monday, previewing the Miami game and some chats and just covering lots of stuff.
It was a pleasure to have you on, my friend. Make sure you go check him out. Until next time, guys, I will see you all soon.